Hello and welcome to another review of a magazine of Diehard Gamefan. So we're at Volume 1, Issue 7. So let's start diving into this 7th issue of this crazy magazine here. So it looks like here for this one, we're cranking it up with rock and roll racing. But as you can tell here from the covers, if you've known anything about Interplay back in the day, so they have the rock and roll racing game, which is actually really good. It was came out on the Super Nintendo now, so I believe on the Sega Genesis, but I think it was on the Super Nintendo where it got more fame. But you can tell like the characters are from the Lost Vikings and all. So it looks like they're going to have some behind the scenes at Interplay. Looks like we're also have a Game Fan exclusive for the Super Mario All Stars. Smoke and Sega's exclusives with Thunderhawk CD, which ended up being called AH3 Thunderstrike, I believe, and Joe Montana Football CD, which I don't know if I'd call that a Smoke and Sega exclusive, but we'll get into that. And then exclusive look at ActRaiser 2 and first picks of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Edition for the Super Nintendo. And we also got Rock Knight Adventures, Battle Maniacs, Final Fight 2, and then looks like we got an inside glimpse of the 3DO and a whole bunch of other games there. So let's get into it. So another advertisement here from RBI 93 Baseball. And here we go with the table of contents. You kind of get an idea of what we're looking at here. Terry Wolfinger, still the main man, doing the artwork on this. All right, so let's get into the editorial zone here from Dave Halverson. So welcome to another edition of your magazine. Now that I've stuck my eyes back into my head, here's what's on my mind. Something's new and very exciting is about to hit our industry. I didn't know how exciting it really was until this week, but now that I've seen it with my own eyes, I am excited. It's 3DO, the new 32-bit game system that may change the way you look at video games from this point forward. Excuse me. I'm not talking about another upgrade, but a whole new world of gaming. I already know what you're saying. I just got my Sega CD or Super Nintendo, and now here we go again. Well, if I was you, I'd hold on to both as neither has even come close to reaching its capabilities and will undoubtedly reach incredible new heights in the years to come. Not to mention the fact that most likely by late 1993, early 1994, Sega is going to launch a 32-bit system of its own, which will hopefully be downwardly compatible. Nintendo's got the SFX, a new 32-bit mega or a 32 meg board on their own 30 and their own CD in the works. Don't get your hopes up till next year, though. When we talk about 3DO, we're not talking about an upgrade, but a whole new standard. This new system will, first of all, satisfy need of gamers over 20 and introduce a whole lot more to gaming right out of the gate. I guarantee if you've got the money, you'll buy one. You'll see it, you'll buy it, and that's it. No questions asked. Eventually, after a solid user base in its place, the price will inevitably drop, and because of its vast array of uses, 3DO will spread like wildfire. That's funny. So, the way I see it, there will be three giants, Sega, Nintendo, and 3DO, a perfect blend to meet all gamers' needs and a wide range of prices to meet their pocketbooks. Actually, the big investment is in the hardware games for all three will stay about the same. The good news is that gaming is here to stay and reach an incredible new level so that young, old, and everyone in between can now enjoy the greatest lifestyle in the world, video gaming. We at GameFan are looking forward to bringing you 3DO in all its splendor, as well as all the new systems in the future, and we will be working right alongside the development companies to bring you up-to-date information and game reviews like only GameFan can. The future, my friends, is looking extremely bright. See you next month. P.S. I'd like to hear your viewpoints on the 3DO in the future as you see it. Also, if you're frustrated with the industry currently focusing on such a young audience, let me know. This information, your letters, are what we base our look and editorial focus on. And believe me, it can make a difference. So you do the writing and I'll do the rest. So, there was something here, though, that he said that was actually, he kind of got it right. Only it was that it wasn't the 3DO, but it eventually ended up being the PlayStation because it was Sega, Nintendo, and a third company, right? But it ended up being Sony. But 3DO, had things maybe worked out a bit differently, and all that could have been that third player, because ultimately in the third generation, right? And for many generations going forward, it kind of ended up being three main companies. Yeah, there were some other competitors there here and there, right, and all, but that's kind of what ended up becoming the standard. And I feel like it started in just generation here, but again, it just didn't end up being Panasonic. It ended up being Sony. But I think he was kind of on the right track though, as far as what he was thinking back then. So another advertisement for Time Gals, and so for the most wanted top 10. So top 10, let's see, we got number 1 is Street Fighter 2 at Super Nintendo. Number 2 is Sonic 2 on the Sega Genesis. Number 3, X-Men on the Sega Genesis. Number 4, Fatal Fury on the Genesis. Number 5, Streets of Rage 2 on the Genesis. Number 6, Echo the Dolphin on the Genesis. Number 7, A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. Number 8, Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo. Number 9, Flashback. And number 10, Pro Quarterback on the Genesis. And most wanted, look, there's several Sega CD games on here. But number 1 is Sonic CD on the Mega CD. Number 2 is Sylphid on the Mega CD. Number 3 is Batman CD and on the Sega CD. Number 4 is Final Fight CD on the Sega CD. Number 5 is Final Fantasy 3 on the Super Nintendo. And again, I'm thinking they're referring to Final Fantasy 5. I think is what they're really trying to say there. Number 6 is Shinobi 3 on the Genesis. Number 7 is Mortal Kombat on the Sega CD. Number 8 is Battletoads on the Super Nintendo. Number 9, Terminator CD on the Sega CD. And number 10, Lunar on the Sega CD. And we got some codes here from Hocus Pocus. Oh, how to play as Super Tails. You can play as Super Tails. And an advertisement for some Flying Edge games. No, some Game Gear Flying Edge games. And some more The Adventures of Monitor there. To be continued. So for the viewpoint, the game of the month was Battle Maniacs. I've tried this game. It's not bad. It's a bit difficult, and it just has I don't know, certain Streets of Rage really set a bar for when it comes to beat 'em ups. I've explained this before, but it's just about the collision between the characters and your move set and all that. A lot of other beat 'em ups just don't quite get it right, and they feel a little like floaty, disconnected from the bad guys and all. And Battle Maniacs is one of them for me. I mean, it's not a horrible game by no means, but I don't know. I wasn't too. I'm not too impressed with like these Battle Maniac games, but that's just my opinion and all. And again, they are pretty difficult too, so maybe that has something to do with it. But I definitely like the artwork to them though and all. But here they gave it for Game of the Month. So let's see. So Skid's pick was Battletoads put me in the zone like never before. Games of this caliber only come along a few times a year. A finely crafted masterpiece. Sergeant Gamer said, 2 years after the initial release on the Mega CD, Sega and Malibu finally welcomed me to the next level. Batman CD is an interesting classic. Tom Slick said, I'll be telling my grandkids about the beautiful day in 1993 when I brought this game to its needs. If you don't like Toads, you don't like games. And the Inquirer said, out of all the hot new cards we received this month, I had to pick Battletoads. This will most definitely be my game of the year. Yeah, so they really like Battletoads. But here we got some stuff on the Sega CD. So let's see, like we had Final Fight CD, which Final Fight CD, I mean, Final Fight on its own, it's a pretty solid beat 'em up. Definitely, I feel like Streets of Rage built on the ground that Final Fight started and all. But again, it's one of those beat 'em ups that does get the collision right and everything, where like beating up your enemies and grabbing them and all that feels pretty solid. And the Sega CD version, it's pretty accurate to the arcade. It loses some detail and color and all, but otherwise it's pretty accurate and all. And you can play 2 players. The music is excellent, obviously, and has a few new options like time attack, I believe, and also. I mean, yeah, Final Fight, as far as when it comes to like home port conversions, definitely one of the better ones out there. Especially because, like on the Super Nintendo one, you can only play. You couldn't. I want to say I think it was only 1 player, and you could only pick 2 characters. Because they came, the first one that came out, Final Fight, you could only pick Cody and Haggard, and then they came out eventually was like a upgrade to it, but this time you could only pick Guy or Haggard in it. Haggard, right? I think that's the guy's name, the mayor. But you can never have all 3 of them together. So for whatever reason, but this one you could. So it's like the one thing that at least in this time that the Sega City or the Sega's version had a one up over the Super Nintendo version. Right here we got Monkey Island, so kind of a point and click game, and Batman Returns on the Sega CD. So they were really raving about like the scaling effects and everything, and it is pretty solid back then. The frame rate can nowadays looks stutters a bit, but otherwise back then, I mean, it looked pretty solid, and all the music is excellent, and I mean, you still got those kind of average side-scrolling beat 'em up gameplay in between the driving levels, but it was definitely a showpiece for the Sega City at that time. We get Out of This World on the Sega Genesis, and then this Jaguar game, and then this Best of the Best, kind of some kind of a fighting game. I don't know about the game, but the movie is actually pretty excellent. It's one of my more favorite B-rated movies. If you've never seen it, you like cheesy '80s karate action flicks, worth a watch. But here we had Sorcerer's Kingdom. I don't remember much about this game or hearing about it. We give it somewhat average reviews. But Night Striker, again on the Sega CD, and Midnight Resistance. The one thing I remember about Midnight Resistance, so it's I remember playing it in the arcade. It's kind of a Contra clone, but it's decent. But the Sega Genesis version gets a lot of praise because it was a decent arcade port, but also the music. Supposedly, the music is even some of the best that on the Sega Genesis, and it was even supposedly better than all what was on the arcade. So, kind of curious to check it out maybe sometime just to listen to the music. Um, let's see, but here we go. So they gave Battletoads again, so Game of the Month. So I'll just read one review here for it. So Trade West plus Rare plus Time plus Super Nintendo equals one of the best games I've ever played. This one measures 9.9 on the adrenaline meter as each time you finish a tough level, like the Snake Pits, you need a shower. This is absolute perfection. A password would make this a perfect 100%. They really liked that game. Then Konami had their NFL football game, but ooh, yikes, not very good scores. Super High Impact, which is kind of an arcade style game. Royal Rumble. Never remember these wrestling games just to get decent reviews. Shadowrun. I've always been curious to try this game out. There's a version on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, and they're both different. But I think the Super Nintendo one is the one that's a bit more memorable. Kind of right up my alley. It's very cyberpunk and all that, so maybe something I should try sometime. But then the Blues Brothers game looks like it did okay. Mario is missing. I just remember people really hating this game, but got somewhat okay reviews on this. Let me see. Let me just read one review. I guess I'm not really sure what this game is truly all about. But let's read this one here. So let's see. I really enjoyed this game. Everything is setting up. Is set up in the Mario tradition. Each level uses the classic Mario theme enhanced for the country you're in, mixing action with Carmen Sandiego theme work, great, providing a really fun game. Finally, an education game that is really fun to play. Huh. Then Kawasaki Challenge, Mech Warrior, Tough Enough, Nigel Mansell F1, and F1 Grand Prix 2. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know. I've said this already before and all, but I just always felt that the Sega Genesis was just doing better during this specific time in the fourth generation than the Super Nintendo. It just has more games they just kind of stick out for me more. But on the Neo Geo, we had Sengoku 2 and Thrash Valley or Rally. But then here we started seeing, so fifth generation is, 32-bit gaming is starting to come out. I remember this when they reviewed like the first game. So this would have been, I'm pretty sure, on the FM Towns Marty, which was kind of like a PC slash home console that was 32-bit powered, and it didn't do that well and all that. But and it was mainly just in Japan that it was sold. But at the time when you were seeing it back then, right? Again, this would have been in 1993. I mean, it was pretty mind blowing. So I'll just read a few things here on this. So uh, Microcosm has the best graphics I've ever seen on a home system. It also has the best movie quality intro I've ever seen. The game itself, however, still has a bit of that PC feeling and goes off on its own a little bit too much. 32-bit is impressive, but the fun, excuse me, is still 16-bit until 3DO at least. Oh, excuse me. So it's gonna give it a 96. So wow, if this is 32-bit gaming, where can I get a good bank loan? You cannot even begin to fathom the quality in the game. The graphics are mind blowing, and the fact that you have total control over your vehicle in this virtual world is too much for my little 16-bit mind to handle. Phenomenal. And that's the thing. I mean, like I said, we're going from 2D to 3D, and it was just such a leap that it was truly mind blowing. I mean, it's hard to explain, right? Unless you were back from that time, because I know people go back to the fifth generation graphics and all, and like 32-bit stuff, and it can seem very rough. But I tell you, it's when we were there in that moment, it was like glimpsing into the future, and it was absolutely mind blowing. And so these guys were getting to experience it right for the very early stages of 32-bit, right? So I can imagine seeing this for the first time would have been really impressive. So this game just blows me away. Everything from the intro to the end of the game is unbelievable. Your ship control is very good, and the various power-ups are excellent. The challenge level is set high, probably to make you appreciate the effects. The first game for the Marty has everything a 32-bit game should have: no access time, amazing graphics, and cinema scenes that are television quality all the way. Not to mention that the game has great control and a soundtrack that really kicks. Hopefully, this game will make it to these shores in the future. As far as I know, the FM Towns Marty didn't come out here in the States. Let's see, we got here Bone Crushing now on the Super Nintendo. Oh yeah, Super High Impact. Oh yeah, that's right, it was an arcade game. Super Turrican and the Sega Sector. Again, kind of cracks me up. Some of the games that they chose, Chacon and Green Dog. That's funny. Let's see, but yeah, Final Fight. So yeah, excellent port of the arcade. I remember looking at the screenshot and I was like, wow, the backgrounds look really detailed. And again, it looks really detailed and all. When you look at it on the pictures, I was like, wow, that looks arcade perfect. When you put it side by side by the arcade, yeah, I mean, it loses some detail and color and all, but it still looks pretty impressive though. And again, the fact that it has all the characters, Guy, Cody, and Hager. Hager, right? Is that his name? Yeah, Hager. And then that you can play two players simultaneously was pretty impressive. Um, but yeah, Final Fight. Then Monkey Island. So we got some of these kind of like point and click adventure games on the Sega CD. This was one of them made by LucasArts, I believe, Lucasfilm. So, Batman Returns. Yeah, so again, they were hyping this game up for a lot, right? And then when it finally came out, they were truly impressed with it. So I'll just read over here. So let's see. So some 200,000 people around the U.S. are waiting for the shiny new CD-ROM player to start paying off. Well, thanks to some brilliant programming and masterful musicians, the time has come. Sega has finally put the finishing touches on Batman Returns, and it's available now. So drop whatever you're doing, finish the mag first, of course, and go out and find one. Okay, I know some of you already have played the action sequences and are probably like, I didn't like it much. Well, take it from me. A big part of that dislike is due to the scratchy soundtrack because with the new tunes in place, my ill feelings immediately changed when I played through the CD. Also, remember to take your time and make good use of your weapons. Proper execution is necessary to make the action portions enjoyable. In any case, if you so desire, you may choose driving only. After you get done with all the oh my gods and no ways, go change your pants and then get ready to have some fun. These driving sequences please the ears, challenge your skills, and provide you with enough graphics to make your eyes pop out further than Ren's. From Ren and Stimpy. That's funny. To complete each stage, you must either defeat a certain amount of enemies or successfully maneuver through in the allotted time allowed. Uh, and of course, awesome scaling bosses are abundant. The control is primo and the scaling is smooth and seamless. This is truly the new standard. Between Malibu and Core, us 3D gamers are well taken care of. More 3D, please. I mean, 3D it was just impressive, right, when we were seeing it, back then. But we got this Bob game from Electronic Arts. I never played it. Seemed kind of average. Nothing that really stood out for me. Out of This World. There's a game I'd like to get into. There's eventually got called like Another World. Like there's a version that you can get like on the modern consoles, like on the Switch and all. Cleans up the graphics and all that, and so that's a good version to play there if you wanted to check this game out. But for back then, it was pretty impressive, right? What they were doing with these, what they were calling cinematic platformers. And Jaguar CD, so here's where they review it. Yeah, I just remember looking at the screenshots and just thought this looked really cool. Because my mind was thinking, how does it look like? Like, how does it run? How does it play? I wasn't thinking so much like we do nowadays, like there's 60 frames per second. I know, because no, this probably would have ran at, I don't know, maybe 20 frames per second. But it was just impressive for us back then. But Thunderhawk. So this game, well, let's read on this. So, oh my, where did this one come from? With no hype at all till now, here comes Thunderhawk. This is the type of game our whole staff has been waiting for. A go anywhere 3D scaling, shooting, and bombing extravaganza. But who would have thought it would look this good and come out so fast? Not us. So we were stoked when JVC gave us the honor of taking a sneak peek at Core's new creation for the Sega CD. Thunderhawk puts you in the cockpit of a one badass attack chopper and loads you up with homing missiles and machine guns, and then drops you right in the middle of a hostile combat area. Now fly. Go ahead, turn left, right, or right, left, climb and dive, scaling that huge bit map tank until you're face to face and blast them to smithereens. You're free to fly over the land, sea. This is awesome. Our early ROM only had one playable level, but there are many missions to conquer, judging from the screen map or the map screen. Get ready for this one. It should be ready this summer. We'll bring you more in our next issue. And our thanks go out to JVC for the great game. So yeah, so when we got the Sega CD, this is one of the first games that we bought on it, and because eventually it ended up being called H3 Thunderstrike, if I recall right. And yeah, it was just impressive because you're in a helicopter and you're going around, right, and all you have like this. It's about as open world as we could get back in the day. So if you're familiar with like the Desert Strike games, kind of like that, only it's in a 3D setting, and you're flying around right in this map, and so you take out these targets, and so each stage has like a certain objective to it and all. But it was just really impressive, right? That you can, again, you can go up, down, left, right, wherever, and that was just truly revolutionary back then. The controls take a little bit of getting used to and all. Again, we were just, we had to go with it with what we had back then with no analog control. And sometimes you have to push certain buttons, right, to move, and again, some of the things hasn't aged quite well, but I really enjoyed this game. Again, we'll see when they review it later on, but I will say right now, though, that it was a game that I really enjoyed myself with because I thought it was really fun. I love playing in this 3D space, and it was training my brain to how to play a 3D game, and was definitely some of the most fun that I've had on the Sega CD. I absolutely love this game, and the music was pretty solid in it as well too. Yeah, really enjoyed this game. So you'll see here as they start, reviewing it in one of the later issues. Rocket Knight Adventure. So we're starting to preview it here. Yeah, this is one of my favorite Sega Genesis games. Just a total blast to play through. Really fun, original, and yeah, it's great. Let's see. As everyone knows, character games are some of the most popular in our industry. Some stick, some don't. Those among my favorites are Mega Man, Sonic, Wonder Dog, Turtles, Battletoads, and now Rocket Knight. Konami creating one of these characters is a reason to celebrate. They are, after all, some of the best programmers in the world. Rocket Knight is a possum, only this possum wears a flexible armor suit and powerful jetpack, which he uses to propel himself over obstacles or into enemies. Rocket also uses his tail to hang and maneuver. The game itself features special effects that you wouldn't think the Genesis could do, like reflection and a rocket that mimics him through an entire level. There is also a ton of diversity. Each level brings an entirely new challenge to the player, and of course, the control is perfect. Rocket himself is loaded with personality. His walk is very animated, and of course, the balancing of the other animations you've come to expect from a character game are all included. What you're looking at is a preview, with no doubt, will be one of the greatest Sega titles ever, and one of the very few that will give Sonic a run for his money. We'll bring you more Rock Knight adventures very soon. It will be our pleasure. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, Rocket Knight Adventures, it didn't quite hit the way Sonic did, but it was at the time it was appreciated, and I think nowadays it's gotten a bit of a cult following it and all, because it is really just an impressive game. It's really fun, and yeah, definitely one of the better third-party Sega Genesis games out there. It's just a total blast to play through. I really enjoy this game. Bram Stoker's Dracula. So here's a game too, also on the Sega CD, that I was impressed with the graphics on it. Yeah, I admittedly the gameplay is not the best, and the full motion video and all that is super grainy and all. But I don't know. It was one of those games that we had, and not the greatest game, but you had it, so you played it, you enjoyed it, and appreciated it for what it was. It was just impressive to see like this kind of stuff back then, even if some of it hasn't aged the best. But here's that best of the best game. So here's a Sorcerer's Kingdom game. I don't know much about this game. Um, the Sega Genesis, out of the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, definitely the Super Nintendo had the killer RPGs out there, and that's what it was mainly more known for. But the Sega Genesis wasn't no slouch. It had some RPGs out there, not all great, but there's definitely options out there, right? So don't think like if you're trying to explore the Sega Genesis's library that there's no RPGs out there. It definitely has some. Though from what it looks like, this one is just kind of one of the mid ones. And here's that fighting stick. Then we get to Street Fighter Championship Edition. Yeah, again, I mentioned before, but this was kind of a big deal back then. For this game coming out on the Sega Genesis. Here we go again with more of the 16 meg Sega or Genesis Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition. This month, after spending hours and hours playing it, we'll go a bit more detailed. This is an excellent translation of Street Fighter 2. Except for a few frames of animation and a slight color loss, it's exact. So you've been playing the Super NES version, and of course you want to know if this one is as good. Yes, it is. The control is perfect, and the four bosses, Bison, Balrog, Sagat, and Vega, are all feel and play almost identical to the coin up, except for Bison's Redizzy combo. But who cares? Bison is already cheap without his combo. Another surprise is the music. While not as good as the arcade, it's excellent for the Sega Genesis, with the pounding bass. Here's a little advice. At Capcom, I played with the new Capcom Power Stick, and it worked perfectly. I highly recommend picking one up. Capcom has taken the Genesis to new limits on this one. The only thing I thought could have been better was the voice. It's a little rough. Other than that, I am sure Street Fighter fans will not be disappointed with this awesome 16 meg cart. And yeah, I mean, it's a. Oh wait, let's see. Oh wait, they're just going over the bosses here. But yeah, I mean, it was really impressive, and all. It was definitely cool to experience Street Fighter 2 on the Sega Genesis, just because it was a game that you never really thought that a Sega console would get. But once we started getting this, it's like, oh, okay, now the big players are starting to port games on the Sega Genesis, like Capcom, Konami, and so forth. So it's kind of a big deal. And yeah, I was really happy when this game eventually came out on the Sega Genesis. Pretty good port. A lot of it I prefer over the Super Nintendo version, but yeah, that voice is it's pretty rough. But here we have Night Striker. Maybe I should try to check this game out and see what it's all about. And so Sonic CD. So they have a bit of an update here. So after the Sega World Show in December, the team responsible for Sonic City chose to delay the game in an effort to use more of the CD's capabilities because, believe it or not, the game was not that well received by attendees, hence a delay ensues. What I'm looking for is a long version similar to Sonic 1, which I feel was superior to 2, along with CD tunes and added animation. Well, it looks like we're getting that and a lot more. The new question is, when? Now that Sonic 3 is in development, undoubtedly with Tails therein, where does the now giant Sega of America fit into the picture? How do they feel about a solo Sonic by the original programmers when they have a cartoon about to air this fall with Tails starring? The plot thickens. More next month. Yeah, Sonic CD, or what was it called there? CD Sonic. But for me personally, it ended up becoming my favorite Sonic game. I've said it before. I'm not the biggest Sonic fan and all, but Sonic City is a game that I would probably say is still my favorite Sonic game. A lot of that probably has to do because it was, even being diehard Sega fans, it was really the only Sonic game that we owned back in the day, on the early Sega systems. And so it was the one that I really put a lot of time into and all that and experience. So that probably has to do a big part of it. But we'll get into this one more as they start reviewing it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this game though. And so talking a little bit more about these two great games, so Xranza and Gunstar Heroes. So yeah, so these games were pretty impressive because they were really showing off what the Sega Genesis could do. So Xranza is now 100% complete and on its way to the pages of GameFan. It's kind of hard to read that. So you'll never know what your Sega can really do until you play this game. Scaling, line scrolling, special effects, it's all here. And good news, they're taking a look at this one over at Sega of America, so you can pretty much count on the U.S. release. If Sega of America decides to bring out this masterpiece from GAO Entertainment, it should be at the upcoming CES. Of course, we'll be there to bring you the latest. Yeah, so it ended up becoming Ranger X out here in the United States, and yeah, it's definitely a solid Sega Genesis game. Definitely worth a look. And then, of course, Gunstar Heroes. Oh, I love this game. So while attending the recent CSG in Japan, Kei, our international editor, got the chance to go behind the scenes and view what he says is the most incredible cartridge-based game he has ever seen. Gunstar Heroes by Treasure, a new company established by a handful of skilled Konami programmers. This two-player simul-action title features smooth animation, multi-joined characters, and the fastest scroll the Mega Drive has ever seen. Gunstar Heroes, working title, will be available in August from Sega of Japan. We're hoping to bring you any update as they come on this awesome new title. Yeah, Gunstar Heroes. Excellent game. Then this game, Time Dominator 1. So this was sort of a Sonic clone. So just like the Super Nintendo had Mario clones, now we're getting Sonic clones because again, Sonic was the first two Sonic games, right? They were pretty big, and so now that those two games have been out for a little bit, now we're starting to get some Sonic clones, and this is one of them. But it actually ended up being pretty good. It ended up being called Socket here in the United States, and it's a decent game. I liked it, but it was published, or I don't know if it was developed, but it was published by a company called Big Talkie. And for previews here, so we had, let's see, what is this? 3x3 Eyes. Some kind of a Japanese Sega CD game, I'm assuming. Gauntlet. And this F1 game on the Sega CD. And Sylphid. I read here a little bit about Sylphid. So you're probably wondering why we keep bringing you these little blurbs on Sylphie. We usually have an early ROM by now. The main reason, as you know, if you read GameFan, is that Game Arts is very protective of this title, especially because of all the false press it has received over here. Sega of America has been spinning its wheels and to date has still not picked up this title. However, another big company is making a bid, and it ain't Sega. The plot thickens. No matter what, though, we will continue our negotiations with Game Arts in an effort to bring you one gnarly 4-page spread on all the 10 plus levels of Sylphie. Yeah, Sylphid was definitely a looker when it came back in the day as far as the graphics goes and all that. One of my favorite Sega CD games and all, and one of the games that was made the system worth owning for me back then, and truly one of my more favorite shoot 'em up games too. Also, Sylphid is excellent. I love this game. And Joe Montana football. There was some, well, at least in this magazine, there was some hype around it, and all that it looked like it was going to be a pretty impressive 3D uh, football game, but I played a little bit of it and all, and it's pretty rough. I would go with the Sega Genesis Joe Montana games because the Sega CD one, it's a bit rough. The Lost Vikings advertisement here, cool little puzzle game. And here we go into the Super Nintendo. So Planet Super NES. So Rock and Roll Racing. So yeah, this game is fun. I played this game before, and it's really fun. It has some kick-ass music to it. What does it have? John Thorogood's Bad to the Bone, Deep Purple's Highway Star, Steppenwolf's Born to Be Wild, Peter Gunn, and Black Sabbath's Paranoid. Yeah, the music is kick-ass in this. And it's just a fun racing game, kind of like that RC Pro Am back in the day on the Nintendo, but just more detailed, more fun, better music, and yeah, this game's a blast to play through. And then, of course, Battle Maniacs. I mean, they really enjoyed this game, but I mean, the graphics were excellent. I remember looking at these screenshots, and I thought it looked cool, like where you see some of their graphics animations of what their attacks look like. Like this guy gets like these battering rams here, and then not battering ram, but like the horns of what are they called? Those rams? I forgot. And then this guy with a spiked ball. Yeah, but it's hard. It's kind of like the original one. They're difficult games. Yeah, but they really dug it though, and give it really really good review. I've kind of, like I said, I played the Super Nintendo one. I got a little ways into it and all, but it's very challenging, and I don't know, something about it that just doesn't quite hold my interest too much on it. But I can see, I guess maybe back then why it would have been a big deal for them. But Alien 3, this game I really enjoyed. Really enjoyed. I actually ended up playing this one first before the Sega Genesis version. And I just want to say, I think it was because our friend that had the Super Nintendo, we brought it over at some point and we rented this game on it. And I remember playing it for while we had rented it and just really remember enjoying this game a lot. Um, at the time, it kind of felt like a more somewhat realistic version of Metroid. At least that's what I thought in my brain at the time, what it was. But it was just a really addicting game. I loved exploring the levels. I remember the music was really excellent in it. I honestly haven't played it really since back in the day, right? So that would have been what 1994, 1993, 94 or so within that time frame. But I do recall really liking it. So maybe it's a game I should try to give another shot too, because yeah, it was pretty excellent. NFL football from Konami. Apparently, it's pretty shitty game of football. It was just interesting, right? Companies like Konami were trying to do a football game. You just had variety, right, back in the day. Royal Rumble. I never really messed around with these wrestling games, but I remember them being kind of popular, and they would get pretty decent reviews. So, for me, wrestling, I went through a period in the '80s with a buddy. Well, my buddy that had the Nintendo. where we kind of got into wrestling, Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, and all that. We kind of got into it and all. So my boy was Ultimate Warrior back in the day. Um, but I never really did get into the video games. Shadowrun. Yeah, I want to try this game out at some point. Definitely seems like just going by the setting and all something that I'll really get into. And what is this? Nitro Punk Smitey Heads? Not sure if this is like an original property and all, but yeah, I'm not too familiar with that game. Some game based on the Blues Brothers. Not familiar with this one either. Mario is missing. So kind of plays like Carmen Sandiego. I used to like the Carmen Sandiego game, so this might be maybe something fun. That maybe my daughter might appreciate this game. But Kawasaki Caribbean Challenge, American Gladiators, Alien versus Predator. So this one's from Activision. So this is different from the arcade version that was from Capcom. That one I actually recently beat on the MAME emulator, and I really enjoyed that one. This one's a bit different, though. It's not quite like that. I played a little bit of this one, and it doesn't seem to be quite as good, but I don't know. Might be still an interesting beat 'em up to check out sometime. There's Alien versus Predator, or Aliens and Predator, two of my favorite movies, and also um, might be worth checking that one out just for that. But this Mech Warrior game, I believe it might have used like some kind of a 3D landscape, possibly Mode 7. I never played this game though. Tough enough, so some kind of a beat 'em up. And Final Fight 2. So now with Final Fight 2, they were able to get 3 characters that you can select along, and then where you're playing 2 players simultaneously. So for whatever reason, they were able to figure that out. I played part 2 and 3, Final Fight 2 and 3. I beat them somewhat recently, and they're okay. Final Fight, the first one is for me is a better one, but they're not that bad, I guess. What is this? Operation Logic Bomb? Remember Metal Gear or Ikari Warriors? Huh. We're kind of a top-down shooter. Interesting. This game here looks like it was a decent racing game. And with this. And so here we have a preview here for, I believe this is Breath of Fire 2. Or no, I'm sorry, Breath of Fire, the original one from Capcom. So, Capcom was starting to experiment with doing RPGs also. And from what I understand, these Breath of Fire games are, they definitely have their fan base. 1 and 2 on the Super Nintendo, and then there was 3 and 4 on the PlayStation. And I mean, from what I've heard, they're decent games. So maybe I should try to check them out at some point. Then we have some previews here. So we got the Empire Strikes Back, so the follow-up to the Star Wars game. Good, cool games, but they are pretty hard though. Again, another game here that's being ported over from the Neo Geo. This one, I believe, is being done by Sunsoft though instead of Takara, I believe. Though, but from what I understand, they were decent ports. I think I did play the Sega Genesis port of World Heroes, and it was all right. But they're talking about here the Super Nintendo one. Here's another one too, Sengaku. That was a Neo Geo game. But then it looks like here they have an interview with Interplay. So Interplay did a lot of stuff. So they did this Clay Fighter game, which had some interesting animation to it. And then, of course, there was that rock and roll game, the Lost Vikings. Eventually, we got this game called Blackthorn, which I'm sure they'll cover in one of the later issues, which is sort of like one of those cinematic platformers. So they were doing some pretty cool stuff. I don't think I played this Clay Fighter game and all, but just the animation and the graphics and all that were kind of cool. And so we go over here, to, excuse me, to the TurboGrafx. Here the game called Beyond Shadowgate. Not too familiar with this one. Looks like it was on the TurboGrafx CD though. Camp California. And Street Fighter 2 on the TurboGrafx. So the Sega Genesis and the TurboGrafx version of Street Fighter 2 came out roughly around the same time, only again, the PC version didn't come out here in the States. This one stayed in Japan. But yeah, they were both excellent ports. It looks like there's some kind of specific control pad for it, apparently, that they were making. I know the 6-button pad on the Sega Genesis was pretty excellent. That was a really great control pad. But the Neo Geo stuff here. So we got the Sengaku game. Never did play this one. Oh no, wait, this is Sengaku 2. Yeah, Neo Geo games had some pretty solid 2D graphics. And we got an ad here for that Mario's Missing game, The Graveyard. Okay, so this is why they reviewed it earlier, was because it was one of their graveyard games. So let's just kind of read over this one right here. Let's see. Can I read it? Will some of it get cut off? We'll see. All right. So I remember back when this Genesis had hardly any action titles. People were starving for arcade action translations. There were way too many shooters out there. No fighting games. That craze had not even started yet. That's why Midnight Resistance was so important. It marked the beginning of the action game years on the Genesis due to its huge success. Although it was only a one-player, the game was done extremely well. The graphics were arcade quality, and the music was actually far superior to the coin-op. Of course, now with programmers having the system operating at its limits, they could easily do a two-player version, but still, Midnight Resistance holds up even today as a strong action title that no Genesis owner should be without. It shouldn't be too hard to dig this one up. Yeah, I should try to give this game a shot at some point. Maybe just to hear the music. But here they're talking about, so they have them Towns Marty. So Marty is a powerful ally with brains. It takes to make smart television a reality. With Marty, you can experience a marvelous dimension in intelligent, interactive television performance. So let's see. Let's just go over this review here of this game. I've never played this game or anything. I think there's a Sega CD version of it. But again, I'm sure this game is not anything special, but because it was just such a big deal, because it was 32-bit and all, let's just kind of go over this here. So say hello to Marty. Then say hello to Psygnosis' microcosm. Let me tell you, 32-bit is phenomenal. I don't know how I could possibly convey the splendor of this game, but I'll try. Microcosm puts you, yes, you, inside a human body, piloting several different crafts. You actually scale through arteries, the heart, the brain, and other choice body parts of the human anatomy. But get this, much of the game is in afterburner perspective. You have to see it to believe it. Between rounds, if you make it, you dock your ship and get out through station corridors, all in 3D with perfect scaling, and you control it. That's just between rounds. Here's the deal. It's the year 2051 on border, a planet controlled by two major companies, Cybertech and Ascalon. People predict that 1 or 2 years, one company will stand at top. Mysteriously, the president of Cybertech dies. Rumors of assassination by the rivals Ascension emerge. Microcosm starts in an executive office where we learn the assassination was carried out by Cybertech. They are now inserting a gray M into the new president, Cosby of Cybertech, in an effort to control his brain. 3 days after the surgery, two spies enter into Crosby's body using microcapsule to rid his body of the Gary M. A world premiere micro fight is about to start, and you're in it. I've had an FM Towns for years, and I've never seen anything close to this. This game has no resemblance to glitchy keyboard-controlled PC game. This is the first-person shooter video game. You're scaling through veins, shooting cells and copsicles. Copsicles? Is that how you say that? You come to an opening. The perspective changes, turning 360 degrees. You're looking at yourself. The sight comes down and covers your eyes, and now you're through it, shooting enemies as they emerge from an opposite vein. Screen scenes like this everywhere, with no access, and you control it. Microcosm has shown me true 32-bit power for the first time, and it's truly amazing, almost too real. 32-bit for the first time, and it's truly amazing. I'm getting my words mixed up. And if you think this is good, the 3DO stuff I saw looks even better. Game is truly moving forward at a breakneck pace, and more adults are entering into the arena. I'm very excited about the future. This truly is our time. While the taggers are out spray painting walls, I'll be in my entertainment zone, scaling through parts unknown. Maybe if politicians let go with the game once in a while, the world would be a better place. Oh well, I'm happy. uh, yeah, I mean, apparently, again, seeing this game back then and all, I'm sure would have been pretty amazing. I mean, just look at this, and all. Again, back then, it would have been pretty impressive to see this. Because mainly, I mean, when games started, right, we're looking at these pixelated graphics, 2D, mainly 2D sprites and all. And sure, they got better looking in this fourth generation, right, with the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis and even the Neo Geo. But when we went to 3D, when we were messing around with like computer graphics and things like that, like cinemas and all, that's where things were really jumping up to another level, and it was just really mind blowing. I know I kind of say this from over and over sometimes, but it was just such a big leap, and yeah, it was just cool to experience it back then. All right, I'll shut up on that now. Yeah, so then here they started talking about the 3DO. So see what I mean? I mean, like, look at this. I'm looking at this right now. Again, if you were to play these games now, they're running at like 20 frames per second. They have a lot of pop up and all that. The polygons or the texture maps, polygons and all that look really pixelated. But when I'm looking at the screenshots, this is all I had to go off of back then. It really looked amazing. And like this guy says here, we're going to set the standard for an entirely new gaming experience. That's Judy Link, the president of Crystal Dynamics. And Crystal Dynamics became a big force back then for the start of 32-bit gaming. They had a lot of stuff out there. They were one of the premier developers for the 3DO, and eventually they got some stuff going on. The other newer systems, eventually the PlayStation and the Saturn. And I mean, early into the 32-bit's lifetime, they were definitely one of the better developers. Let's see. So here we got an ad for somewhat talking distribution. But here we got some quarter crunchers games. Oh, Saturday Night Slam Masters from Capcom. Like, what is this? God, I mean, like I said, looking at the screenshots and all, I take myself back to that time. And so let's see. So if you think you've seen 3D, think again. Solvalo is so good it's almost worth a trip to Japan to play this. This unit is just too expensive for US arcades. Although I did play it at Cyber Studios inside Caesar's Palace. Of course, Ken gave me free credits in Las Vegas. Solvalu is actually a 3D Exevius, which takes you from high in the sky to ground level as if you're skimming the earth and into deep cavernous tunnels. At one point in the game, you dive below the ground, whisk through winding tunnels, and emerge into a huge cavernous room that seems 100 yards wide, giving the player almost weightless feeling. Solvalu is the real thing. At some point, Namco will undoubtedly bring this and Starblade to 3DO. When that time comes, make sure you've got one in your entertainment center, because Namco is a 3DO developer. Namco, I mean, they were one of the other companies that were really pushing the limit as far as like what in technology, as far as for video game graphics and all that. Them and Sega, right? They were doing some pretty impressive stuff. But some more advertisements here. So other stuff. So again, I'm just going to kind of skim through this, read, maybe something that kind of catches my eye, but otherwise you can just sort of pause it and read on your own. But let's see here, what's coming out here. So Street Fighter 3 is currently still in development, and whenever we hear anything from a reliable source, we're going to let you know. Super Street Fighter 2 is also in the testing stages. So the new Street Fighter 2 features 4 new characters: a girl, a Bruce Lee type character, a boxer, and an Indian. Was that pretty accurate? So the girl was Cammy, the Bruce Lee fighter was Fei Long, the boxer, well, that would have been a DJ, a kickboxer, and an Indian, well, that was more, yeah, I guess, and he is an Indian, but then he went to Mexico, but that's what, what's his name, uh, T-Hawk, I believe. Each character were on the fighting zone here. It's Mortal Kombat. First of all, the Super NES version. The Super NES version will be censored for Mortal Kombat. The good news is that there may be a code to access to Carnage. There is a good chance you will be able to control the last 2 bosses. No news on the Sega version except that they are further along. Hey, no news is good news when it comes to censorship. They were talking about an F-Zero 2. Ultimately, that didn't end up happening. Let's see, they started talking about Zombies Ate My Neighbors, which is a fun little game. So Sega stuff. So this is this is interesting what Sega was doing. I mean, they were definitely trying to. I mean, this is almost like a Game Pass from back in the day. So for those of you that don't know, so let me just read this part here. So where it says in Sega news, the hot topic is the Time Warner deal. Next year, your cable company may offer the Sega Channel, will allow you to download games and preview new games right into your living room for a small monthly fee. If testing goes well, look for the Sega Channel sometime in the near future. So yeah, I mean, my understanding is so you get set up through your cable company, and so there's this option for the Sega Channel, and so you can download some games on there to test them out, and also kind of sort of what Game Pass is nowadays. And they were doing this shit back like in what 1993, 1994. It didn't take off. I know that much, and so I'm just going to assume they never really made a big profit from it. But the idea was there right from the beginning to try to do this kind of subscription based service, which I'm sure we're all fans of it now, right? Especially with everything that came out on Game Pass recently, with that whole mess. But just that they were thinking about this kind of stuff and all that, right? And all as far as like on a technical level, it's pretty impressive. Let's see, but they're talking about Castlevania Bloodlines and also Sonic 3 here. Let's see, and then of course they start talking about some 3DO coverage that's going to be increasing. Yeah, good stuff. Oh, and here, so they have a sneak peek of this ActRaiser 2 game. I did enjoy this game. I did play this game back on the Super Nintendo again from our buddy that brought it over, and we rented it, for him. And it's cool. I like it. The first ActRaiser, I've played a little bit of it. It's it has kind of a simulation, kind of like a God simulator, and that part is I don't know. I don't quite understand it completely. I'm just kind of like I just want to get into the action. So that's why I thought that this game would be excellent for that, right? Because it's mainly just more action, and it's pretty cool. It is hard. I do remember that. The music is really excellent though from Yuzo Koshiro. Only this time he does more of a classical kind of or symphonic orchestrated score, like, but it's decent. Yeah. And so some fighting games. So again, Art of Fighting and Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Okay, so here we go. This is where they're talking about the Mario Kart All Stars. So remember the magic of Mario on the NES? Well, here 4 adventures recreated on 16-bit all-in-one cart with all new sound and graphics. This exciting new Mario compilation hits Japan this July. US release? We'll keep you posted. So yeah, so this is where we're starting to get some remasters. They've kind of taken over the industry now. But Sonic was being kind of a big deal, right? So now we got a Sonic cartoon. So set to air this fall, The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog looks fantastic. We all agree that after viewing the promo that this will be the finest cartoon airing in the US. Not only is it extremely well animated, it's good laugh out loud funny. The storyline is reminiscent of Roadrunner and Robotnik bent on the demise of our beloved Sonic. Only Wile E. Coyote never got worked this hard. Jaleel White does the honors of Sonic's voice, and it works well. It's about time we got some good animation. Set your VCRs. Look for our coverage on the darker primetime Sonic cartoons next month. And so then here we got some stuff for the let's see, it looks like the links and the Game Gear. A lot of cool like Mickey Mouse Disney games on the Sega Master System and the Game Gear. And of course subscription stuff. And the Postmeister. Alright, so let's just pick one here. Alright, let's just do this middle one here. So, dear Postmeister, first off, I love your mag, and if you've got the answers, I've got the questions. When is Mortal Kombat due for Super NES? Will they keep the violence, such as pulling out your opponent's heart in? Any idea how the buttons will be on the Super NES, like block, low punch, etc.? Will Reptile be on the Super NES version? And if so, can you be him? And last but not least, will Art of Fighting be on the Super Nintendo? Thanks a lot, Jeff Hutchins. So, dear Jeff, the latest word on Mortal Kombat is that the Carnage may be accessible by a special code. What type of code, action, replay, or controller, we don't know. This comes from a reliable source, but as always, could change. Would they release the code to gamers above the age of 18 only? And if so, would keep it from spreading to younger players? I guess we won't know until it's released in around August or August to October. As for Reptile, we'll find out. But our source tells us that you will most likely get to control the last two bosses. And lastly, check out other stuff, screenshots for Art of Fighting for the Super Nintendo. Looks good, huh? Thanks for the letter. Fighting game fans. And so just some more mail order stuff. And so Shadowrun. What's the grand prize? A $500 electronic boutique shopping spree plus a complete Shadowrun prize package, including Shadowrun jacket, books, games, and figures. That'd be pretty sweet. And of course, another ending it with a James Bond advertisement. Who's my favorite James Bond? Let's see. I would say I really like Daniel Craig, but I really like Pierce Bronson too. That was kind of where I started watching more Pierce or 007 movies. Was the Pierce Bronson one, like GoldenEye? Um, is it Die Another Day? I forgot. But the ones that he was in was the ones that I tended to enjoy the most. I mean, I've seen the Sean Connery ones. This actor, I kind of forgot his name. I think he did like one or two movies, and then Roger Moore. But Pierce Bronson has always been the one that just kind of stuck out to me the most. But yep, so that's it for this issue here. We're still in the thick of it on 16-bit gaming, but we're getting a glimpse of the future. And so, yeah, it was definitely an exciting time back then to be a gamer. And so, for me personally, the Sega Genesis was just firing on all cylinders. The Super Nintendo had some great stuff. But again, for those lucky enough, right, to be able to get a peek at that new technology that was coming out, I mean, it was pretty amazing times. But yeah, but that's what I got for this issue here. And so we'll see you hopefully maybe next week with the next issue. Have a good one.